Now, Attorney General, some time ago you mentioned that the government has a plan to build a second courthouse. And of course, there was some rationale given for the building of that second courthouse. And one of them, of course, is to clear a number of the cases. They're backlogged and so on. And so therefore, it is really to advance justice and so on. Could you speak a little bit to the second courthouse? Because that would mean, of course, you're going to have to need more judges and you're going to have to need more staff and all of that sort of a thing that can come. Of course, justice is not cheap.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
We have an immediate problem in St. Kitts and Nevis where there is a bottleneck, a backlog of cases, and it impedes the criminal justice system. At this point in time, there's a lot of concern in our country over a spike in the whole question of homicides. Although the general statistics show that there has been a general decline in other types of crime, violent crime, especially gun crime, has been very high and is a utter concern to the government and to the people, and we have to deal with that. But apart from that, we have had over the last couple of years an increase in the number of matters that are not being had at the assizes. People are languishing in jail for too long, on remand, sometimes 2 years, 3 years. Some of the matters are taking too long to get before the court. And if we are going to have a democratic society, a proper society in which we want to uphold the Constitution, the rule of law, we have to have people have access to justice. People who are charged have to have their cases determined as quickly as possible. They're not guilty until proven so by a court of law, and you should have relatively quick access. Similarly, and just as importantly, victims of crime need to get justice as well. Not just who are being tried, but if somebody is a victim of a crime, they are part of that criminal justice system. They need to have closure to whatever had been done to them. And so there needs to be that procedure. What we hope to do is that, I should just point out again the point that at the mayor sizes that was concluded, there were 32 matters that had been on the docket that were not heard. These were traversed to the September sizes, in addition to 16 new matters. So for the September sizes, we have something like 48 matters. There's a significant number of matters to be heard. And we have to do something to reduce this backlog and increase it. So there's that immediate problem for us to be managing, to administering the court system. And so we will be, are making plans right now and starting to work to put in place a second courthouse at the Sully Llewellyn Judicial and Judicial Complex, Legal and Judicial Complex at East Independence Square. We have been in discussion with the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, because ultimately they are the ones, that arm of government who are responsible for the maintaining of the court system. And we have had meetings with her ladyship, Honorable Dame Justice Pereira, and she has told us that there has been, they are very supportive of what we do and have asked us to put in place certain support systems. And once we are able to provide, as there was the courtroom, as you mentioned, support staff, secretaries, bailiffs, and so on, to support another judge, that we will be having, we hope, early in the new year, a second judge for the St. Kitts Circuit, to be able to assist us to help in reducing this backlog of cases. I should also point out that, and I'm saying this, that for some time, St. Kitts and Nevis has, as part of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, There have been discussions about having a new halls of justice. It's a justice project that had been supported by our former Chief Justice, Christian Sir Hugh Allins.
Yes.
And before him, others before had also brought it up. But there has been, as it was, a program, a plan to introduce new halls of justices throughout the Eastern Caribbean. St. and Nevis have had, as it was, preliminary discussions and plans. So it's more of a medium-term plan. And one would hope that once we are able to settle the current system, we can turn our attention to, as it was, doing plans and getting the correct support and financing to have, as it was, a proper halls of justice project that will incorporate not just the High Court, but the Magistrates Court as well. But I think that this would be closer later down in our term that we'll be looking at such a approach.
Now, AG, what you have said is quite noble, because we always hear the saying that justice delayed is justice denied. And having people on remand for so long without bringing them to trial can be seen as justice delayed and sort of justice denied. But we have another matter. While we are holding people on remand, so many people and so on in the prison wasn't built to hold so many persons, and so therefore we really have to look at building a new prison in terms of our whole, sphere of things in the justice system. Of course, the prison is not just about punishment, but it's also about rehabilitation and so on. But I wonder really how people can be rehabilitated in such a place. I have fears of ever going inside there when I hear how many people are in one cell and all of that sort of a thing. I mean, people like Amnesty International and so might be saying that, look, this is a human rights violation. What do you have to say about that, AG?
Lesroy, I think you have raised a very pertinent issue. I should say that just this morning we have had the second meeting of the Criminal Justice Strategic Board that was implemented just a few weeks ago.
Right.
And at our meeting this morning, this matter did arise because the Superintendent of Prisons, Mr. Connor, is a member of the board, and he would have reported to the board that the prison the present complement that it should have is 160 inmates, and currently we have 224 inmates. Wow. We have an average of 60 people on remand. And remand basically means these are people who are pending trial. They have not yet been tried and convicted. They have not been proven guilty, but they are incarcerated. And so we have these basic statistics. And it's one of the issues that the creation of the Criminal Strategic Board is being put in place to help to address. Because ultimately, whereas there are only 160 people should be there, or the accommodation, and there's so many more, part of what we would hope to do through the establishment and work of the board is to see how we can reduce the number of inmates in it. So whereas I take the point that there is need to consider and get approval for building a new prison, we can also work to manage the prison populations that we currently have. It may well mean find ways to speed up the process of trials, such as the second courtroom, maybe more magistrates. There are other ways that we can implement strategies to address what is clearly a very serious problem that we have here in our community. And so you also raise the issue, as you speak of the prison, of questions of what really is prison. Is it punishment, or is it for rehabilitation? Is it about redemption, or is it
damnation?
And Mr. Connor did raise in his discussion with us today a number of issues that were quite pertinent. For instance, he has mentioned that in prison there are some 12 inmates who are preparing for CAPE, are doing education is a big part of it. They do music and art. People are making shoes. And there are issues that our society needs to address, wider than just incarcerating people and having pay for whatever transgressions they've done against the rest of society. What happens when they come back out of prison? Do we say that they've served their time? Do we integrate them? Can they get jobs? And these are other questions that need to be addressed rather than just building prisons to lock up people and punish. Clearly, we don't expect that if you go to the criminal justice system, it's about vengeance against people who have done that. But having justice really has to be done, and we have to take these into consideration. But to answer your question, we initially are looking at other ways to reduce the pressure on the prisons by improving access to justice, having people have their matters come before the court, and finding other ways in which to deal with it. One issue that we would have to address, and this is something also, I also attended this morning a conference, a regional conference that's being held at the Marriott, at which the leadership, the Chief Justice is attending, which has to do with juvenile justice, and it has to do with pre-sentencing diversion conference. In this conference, for instance, you're looking at ways in which young people, juveniles, who would normally be offenders, how do you deal with them before they can reach to the court? Are there alternative ways to deal with that? And by extension, I raise that to say that it is time for us to be looking at alternative sentencing rather than just incarceration. For instance, one example that can be given, if somebody commits trivial larceny, you're going to a farmer's ground and you steal from him and he's caught and carried before the court, should be locked up? Or should he go and work on the farm to pay off for it and maybe do more work than what it was? Should people go and clean the cars, got some seaweed off the beaches and do work in that way and do the community work and so on for minor offenses? Is it just black and white? You commit a crime, you go to jail and you pay your time? Or should we find alternative ways in which as a society we can help to rehabilitate and have people do their service, do their time for the offenses they may have committed? And there needs to be more thought and more discussion within our communities as how we can address these problems, societal problems that we have, and how we deal with the criminal justice system.
Now